My name is Jake, I'm 28, and if I could go back in time to give my younger, more naive self a piece of advice, it would be brutally simple. Never trust anyone in business, especially family. The idea that there's some unshakable bond of trust between partners, or even brothers, is nothing but a fairy tale. And like all fairy tales, it's meant to keep fools like me feeling safe, content, while someone close to you, like your older brother, slowly moves in for the kill. Mike is 30 now. He's always been the one charging ahead, the guy who refuses to take no for an answer. Growing up, I admired that about him. We had this dream, this vision of building an empire together, a duo rising to the top, untouchable. I honestly thought we were in it for the long haul, fighting battles, overcoming obstacles, and coming out stronger on the other side. That's how it was supposed to go, right? Brothers sticking together, both benefiting from each other's successes. We started out the same, from the ground up, hacking through the chaos that is the business world. At first, it was us against the world, fighting through late nights, dealing with bad clients, celebrating small wins. We made our fair share of mistakes, learned from them, dusted ourselves off, and kept moving. With every victory, I believed more and more that we were following the same playbook. I thought we had the same end goal, building something together, a legacy. But looking back, I was clearly the only one playing by those rules. I was the naive one. Then came the client, the game changer. You know the type. Not just any regular deal, but the golden ticket. This was the one, the kind of contract that transforms everything. It was the deal that would catapult me to the next level. More money, more power, more connections. Months of careful planning, negotiating, and nurturing the relationship had all led to this moment. We had shaken hands. I had the numbers, the terms. Everything was basically locked in. All that was left was to sign on the dotted line, and I'd be in. But Mike? He had other plans. There's something about the way he always knows when things are going too well for me. Like he has some kind of sixth sense for it. Just when I thought I had the win in the bag, he swooped in, out of nowhere. But instead of being the supportive older brother, instead of having my back, Mike decided to make his move. You've seen those movies, right? The ones where the hero loses everything in the last 10 minutes? They're standing there smiling, thinking everything's finally going to work out, and then boom, everything crashes down. That's pretty much how it went down for me. Mike didn't just step in to help, though. Oh no. He came to take what was mine. He swooped in like a vulture, and with one swift move, snatched the client right out from under me. I remember that moment like it was in slow motion. Mike's smug grin as he said, "Jackpot, bro," like it was nothing, as if he hadn't just obliterated months of my hard work with a single stroke. I stood there speechless, trying to process what had just happened, while he casually strolled away with the prize. It wasn't just a betrayal. This wasn't just a stab in the back. It was a full-blown execution. One shot, straight to the head. And he didn't even flinch. You'd think after everything, after all the years of dreaming and planning together, sharing our deepest fears and ambitions, he might hesitate, or at least show a hint of regret. But nope. To Mike, this was just another day in the office, another win under his belt. And the worst part? I realized right then that trust, especially in business, is a myth. When greed takes over, loyalty doesn't stand a chance. Anything's possible when the stakes are high enough. The next day, I walked into the office and immediately felt the energy shift. You know that buzzing sound of excitement that ripples through a room when something big happens? Yeah, that was the atmosphere. Everyone huddled together, all eyes on Mike. They were crowded around him like he was some kind of hero, showering him with praise. Handshakes, pats on the back, and congratulations all around. "He got the deal," they said. "What a guy!" I stood off to the side, watching the whole thing unfold, and I couldn't help but feel the pit in my stomach growing deeper with each passing second. Seriously? That's all it took for them to forget how we got here? No one had any clue what price was paid for that win. But I guess that's the thing about business. It's never about how you play the game, just whether or not you win. Ethics, loyalty, even relationships, none of it matters if the results are there. And in that moment, the only result that counted was Mike's victory. To them, he was the golden boy, the genius who just landed the biggest deal of the year. And me? I was just a shadow on the wall. I could feel the anger rising inside, but I tried to keep it together. You know that feeling when everything inside you is on fire, but you can't let anyone see it? I took a deep breath, plastered on the fakest smile I could muster, and tried to act like it didn't bother me. But man, it felt like a punch to the gut. A low blow that left me gasping for air. So, I did what any rational person would do. Or at least, what I thought was rational at the time. I went to talk to him. Brother to brother, man to man. I figured we'd hash it out, clear the air, maybe find some common ground. After all, we had a history, right? We'd been through thick and thin together. This wasn't just some business deal. It was personal. I deserved an explanation at the very least. But when I finally confronted him, all I got was the same arrogant, dismissive attitude. Mike didn't even blink. "It's business, Jake," he said, like that explained everything. He flashed that wide, self-satisfied grin, the one that made me want to knock it right off his face. It was as if he'd unlocked the secrets of the universe, and I was just too dumb to understand. Meanwhile, inside, I was boiling over. I tried to stay calm, but it was getting harder by the second. Imagine this. We built all of this together, step by step. Every late-night meeting, every difficult client, every single win and loss, we shared it all. There was a time when I thought we were equals, partners in every sense of the word. But that day, it became crystal clear that Mike didn't see it that way. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about his insatiable hunger to be number one. And in his eyes, I was just another obstacle in his path. This wasn't just a client he stole from me. This was my shot, my chance to break through and finally step into the spotlight. I had earned this moment. And him? He didn't even hesitate. He swooped in, took what was mine, and didn't look back. He stole my success right out from under me, and the worst part was, he didn't care. Not one bit. That's when it hit me. Mike had crossed a line I didn't even know existed until he bulldozed right over it. There was no going back from this. He'd shown me exactly who he was, and I couldn't unsee it. Trust? That word was meaningless now, at least when it came to him. I made up my mind right then and there. If Mike wanted to play hardball, I could do that too. He may have won this round, but the game wasn't over yet. He'd better be ready, because from now on, every move I made would be calculated, and every step would bring me closer to making him regret the day he ever thought he could cross me. Mike was on top. Contract signed, money pouring in like clockwork, and the whole office was buzzing with his success. He strutted around like a king, basking in the glory, sitting on his metaphorical throne as if he had everything under control. Everyone treated him like the golden child, the untouchable star who could do no wrong. And me? Well, you might think I spent that time licking my wounds, sulking in the shadows. But you'd be dead wrong. I'm not the kind of guy who curls up and cries when I get knocked down. No, I've always believed in one simple truth. When you get punched in the gut, you hit back twice as hard. And that's exactly what I planned to do. The moment Mike walked off with that deal, I started digging. Every project has cracks, and I knew if I looked close enough, I'd find Mike's weak spots. And guess what? I didn't even have to dig that deep. Mike, the so-called business genius, hadn't covered all his bases. He was so wrapped up in the glory of stealing the client that he hadn't thought about what came next. Classic Mike. Always thinking he's invincible, always convinced that once the ink dries on the contract, the game's over and the prize is his. Wrong move, bro. Dead wrong. And the best part? The client wasn't some clueless, naive pushover. They weren't the type to be easily dazzled by flashy presentations and empty promises. They had doubts, serious doubts, about some of the terms in the deal. You know, the fine print. The stuff Mike had brushed off because, in his mind, he'd already won. That's his thing. He loves the victory lap, soaking in the attention. But he forgets about the details that can bring everything crashing down. It's like clockwork with him. He grabs the trophy and thinks he's crossed the finish line, but the race is far from over. And that's when I smelled blood in the water. Mike had handed me an opportunity on a silver platter. Like a predator stalking its prey, I started making my moves, quietly, carefully, without drawing attention. I didn't need to shout from the rooftops or make a spectacle. Subtlety was my weapon of choice. I started talking to the right people, pulling strings behind the scenes, dropping hints, planting seeds of doubt. Not directly, of course. I'm not the kind of guy to stand on a soapbox and scream, "Hey, look at this idiot over here!" No, I played it smart. I'd say things like, "Yeah, Mike's deal looks solid, but I heard there might be some concerns with the fine print." Or, "If I were in your shoes, I'd double-check those numbers before signing off." And people listened. They started to ask questions. "Wait, Mike missed that?" They'd say, a little shocked, because in their minds, Mike was the golden boy, the one who always had his act together. And I'd give a nonchalant shrug and say, "Well, mistakes happen, you know. But when you're dealing with something this big, you can't afford to overlook anything." That's when the game really began. While Mike was busy celebrating his so-called victory, oblivious to the cracks forming beneath him, I was already pulling the threads of his empire apart. Quietly, meticulously. I started working my network, calling in favors, making sure the right people knew about those little issues Mike had overlooked. But I was smart about it. No grand declarations, no obvious moves, just whispers. Strategic conversations, the kind that get people thinking, second-guessing, doubting. And Mike? He had no clue. He was too busy basking in his triumph, too arrogant to notice that the ground beneath his feet was starting to crumble. He thought that once he snatched the client from me, his work was done, that it would be smooth sailing from here on out. Meanwhile, I was slowly tightening the screws, setting the stage for his downfall. Every move I made was calculated, every conversation deliberate. I wasn't just coming for him, I was going to dismantle everything he had built. I was going to make sure he felt the same helplessness I felt when he took that client away from me. This wasn't about getting even anymore. It was about reclaiming what was mine, and making sure Mike learned that you don't cross someone like me and get away with it. He may have had his moment in the sun, but trust me, the storm was coming. And when it hit, he wouldn't even know what hit him. The first step of my plan was so simple I wondered why I hadn't thought of it earlier. It wasn't about what to do, but how to do it smoothly, so Mike wouldn't even realize everything was crumbling beneath his feet. The idea was simple. Destroy the trust between Mike and his client. In business, trust is like oxygen. Once you lose it, you start suffocating. And I was about to give Mike a solid business suffocation session. I started digging. Of course, Mike thought he was the great contract genius, but you know what happens when you get too cocky? You start ignoring the details. And those details, they're like little time bombs. They can explode when you least expect them. I was about to press the button. It only took me a couple of days to gather a ton of information about how carelessly he'd handled the important parts of the contract. After that, it was classic. A few insider conversations here, a couple of subtle hints there. Rumors spread like wildfire. Clients started asking questions. And not just any questions, but the kind that make you feel like you're walking on a minefield. "Are you sure Mike is handling this properly?" one client asked. "I've heard he missed some critical points," another chimed in. And that's how it started. Once doubt begins to grow, it's like weeds strangling everything in sight. Even the most confident player, like Mike. And him? Mike didn't even notice the ground starting to shift beneath him. He was too busy enjoying his victory, walking around the office with that grin, like he'd already climbed to the top of the world. But I knew he was standing on a slippery slope, about to slide down. In business, reputation is everything. You can be the coolest guy on the planet, but once people start doubting your competence, it's game over. Mike had no idea his house of cards was about to collapse, and I stood back, watching the cracks widen. Over time, the rumors found their audience, and it was like watching a fire slowly but surely spread. Mike's clients started asking questions, hard ones, the kind that keep you up at night. Those "what if" and "are you sure?" questions hit confidence like an ice-cold shower. And suddenly, Mike, who had once been so certain of his invincibility, began to realize that his confidence was melting away. "Hey, Mike, can you explain this?" One client asked a question that clearly caught Mike off guard. And then it all began. He tried to cover up the fact that things were going wrong. Hell, he put on a full-blown camouflage operation, trying to patch up all the holes in his project. But those holes kept popping up faster than he could fix them. It was like watching someone try to tape up a sinking ship with duct tape. I could practically see his position, growing more and more unstable. You know when you look at a sandcastle that's about to collapse? That was Mike. His success was built on sand, and I was doing everything I could to make that sand crumble even faster. The whole time, I sat on the sidelines, ready for my moment. I knew that once the client realized Mike couldn't deliver on his promises, I'd have my opening. And that moment came. Mike flailed around like a man realizing he didn't have a parachute in freefall. He made desperate attempts to hold on to the client, offering to fix the situation. But it was obvious he was bargaining for a second chance with someone who had already made up their mind. The client knew. Mike couldn't deliver. They looked at him like you'd look at a pie about to explode in your face. And me? I was waiting in the wings, ready to make my move. When things got really bad, I approached the client. "Look, I know things didn't go as planned," I started. "But I've got a solution that can actually work." And voila. They didn't have a choice. I offered my revised plan, and they grabbed it like a lifeline. The client quickly realized that I was their last hope for salvation. As soon as I presented my solution, they ran to me like I was the only person on Earth with a helicopter during the zombie apocalypse. And just like that, the contract was back in my hands. Mike, he lost control of the situation like a driver without brakes speeding down a mountain. His major blunder cost him everything, and I wasn't about to stop there. After signing the contract, I moved on to the next part of the plan. It wasn't enough to just take Mike's client. I needed to bury his career. After all, what's the fun in winning if your enemy is still alive and could come back? I started carefully spreading the word about how Mike had messed up. He was too busy basking in the glory of his brief success to notice that I was tearing him apart, piece by piece. The rumors spread like viral cat videos, fast and everywhere. Mike, the great businessman, started losing clients one by one. You know how it is in business? You can mess up once, and maybe they'll forgive you. But if you screw up and everyone notices, say goodbye to your reputation. And unfortunately for Mike, he valued his reputation. But no one trusted him anymore. For him, it was a catastrophic blow, destroying everything he'd spent years building. His clients literally fled his office like there was a fire, while Mike stood there, trying in vain to convince everyone that everything's fine, it's just a temporary problem. I watched as his career crumbled like a house of cards in a gentle breeze. Reputation is fragile, and Mike, it seemed, thought it could be fixed with regular superglue. Sorry, bro, but in the business world, they don't forgive failures like that. But of course, I didn't stop there. You don't think I'd just leave Mike with a ruined career and ride off into the sunset, do you? No, bro, I decided to go even further. I needed to finish him off completely, to make sure he was not just down, but forgotten in this business. I started targeting the people he still had, the remaining partners, contracts, minor collaborations, and honestly, convincing them that working with Mike was a risk was easier than taking candy from a baby. Listen, you know Mike likes to take risks, right? Yeah, he's one of those guys who promises more than he can deliver. Are you sure you want to work with him? That's how I entered every meeting. And it worked. People started dropping their contracts, refusing to work with him. Mike found himself completely isolated, like a ship without a captain in a stormy sea. And then came the real twist. Mike, realizing that his ship was sinking, tried to reach out to me. Oh yeah, that moment was priceless. He thought we could talk things over, that there was still some kind of understanding between us. He was dead wrong. I wasn't about to give him a second chance, no matter how sorry he tried to look. For me, this was the end. Once he crossed the line and took my client, he chose this path. And now he was reaping the consequences of his actions. Jake, maybe we can work something out. He messaged me, trying to play the innocent lamb, forgetting he was the one who gutted me. And you know what I said to him? Nothing. I just left him to read his messages in the void, just like he once left me with shattered dreams. Now Mike has nothing left. Seriously, I mean literally nothing. No job, no clients, no reputation. He looked like that guy who showed up to a party in the wrong outfit, only realizing it when everyone was already staring. And believe me, there was plenty to stare at. His once promising career now lay in ruins. And as I watched everything he built crumble before my eyes, I knew this was his end. Mike was erased from our industry. Not just put on pause, but wiped out, like a bad draft. All he could do was replay his past mistakes, but that wouldn't save him. He destroyed our bond for some short-term gain, thinking betrayal could be justified by success. Well, bro, you were wrong. Big time. I destroyed his future, just like he once destroyed my hopes. And here's the strange part. I didn't feel proud of what I did. No, it wasn't that triumphant moment where you stand on top and feel the adrenaline rush. But I knew one thing. Justice had been served. Mike would never get in my way again. It was a cold, clear act of retribution for his betrayal. I didn't feel like the hero of this story, but you know, this isn't the kind of game where the winner gets a medal. This was war, and I won by showing him that betrayal is a game with only one ending.